What kind of show is this?
It's a white chocolate extravaganza.
We're starting to look like a panel at Shepherd's Conference.
I was going to say a revoice. No?
Where's my volume?
Probably that
We're
too.
going to talk about Hunger Games 2020. Need a little more volume here?
Yeah.
I got it. There we go.
Okay.
Yes. And we got Michael Dougherty coming on the show from National Review. I'm excited about getting him on the show. There's kind of a little fight.
Oh, it's like an intramural conservative food fight.
Yeah, a National Review fight and everything.
In-house.
As you
In-house.
guys
Maybe
can see,
pillow fight.
we got Pastor Wilson on the show.
Hi.
Darren Doane, director
Hey,
Darren Doane.
I'm here.
Of course, Pastor Toby, Gabe, and No Knox.
Oh, man.
No Knox. It's a hard knocks life.
Knox, I did not know you were gone. Why are we doing this? Where are you? Where have you gone?
Yeah.
What did you do to him?
Well, so Knox had to go on a trip and actually do work and make real money. Yeah.
The nerve.
Yeah, seriously.
The nerve.
So if somebody would like to underwrite him,
Yes.
if you want to see him back,
exactly.
if you want to see him back on the show,
Join the club. There we go.
Make her check out the Cross Politics.
That's great stuff. Hey, we had a friend, Jerome, send us some books.
Is that right?
Here. And see those little kid books?
Okay.
One's for you, one's for Knox. And I already got mine. My kids, Jerome sent it to us last night, and my kids immediately wanted to read it. So we read it for the little bedtime. It's a bedtime kind of poem on fighting pirates with
Pillow
pillows.
fighting pirates.
Yeah, it was good. So thanks,
Great
Jerome.
name.
We'll send a link out actually to that book because Jerome just gave it to us. So I think we need to send a link out to it. So
Okay, we'll send it now.
how smart is that? Though, like people are finally realizing, like, give stuff away for free.
and Cross Politic will plug it.
Right.
I know.
That's really smart.
Yeah. So whiskey. We'll plug whiskey, obviously.
Whiskey.
Whatever
and-
else.
Wait,
What are we doing?
I thought we weren't talking about
Kids,
that.
books, and whiskey.
That's right.
This is a family show for all ages. Also, this show is brought to you by Logos Online
Speaking
School.
of whiskey for kids.
Logos Online School.
Yeah.
LogosOnlineSchool.com. I'd read you the whole ad, but Gabe didn't share it with me. I don't have permission to read it. So I'm just going to tell you, LogosOnlineSchool.com. Logos Online School is a school that is committed to offering online Christ-centered classical education for grades 7 through 12 that's both affordable and accredited. It's Christian, classical, affordable, accredited, and is built around relationships, online classes meeting daily Monday through Thursday with outstanding teachers who take a personal interest in your student. It's almost like I read an
that's
actual
really good. Yeah,
ad.
that was good.
I just made that up.
you make that up for real?
But it's actually outstanding teachers, not outstanding.
Right. That's right. Thank you.
Don't,
Thank you for
don't slur that, all right?
And I'm not feeling nauseous.
LogosOnlineSchool.com.
Sign up now,
Okay.
all right?
Well, now what happened this week?
So it's Pride Month.
What's that mean?
And yeah, I know. Seriously. It means
What are we proud about?
Romans 1 month.
Proud of our shame.
Yeah, exactly. So Trump tweets out this week. He says, as we celebrate LGBT Pride Month and recognize the outstanding contributions LGBT people have made to our great nation, let us also stand in solidarity with many LGBT people who live in dozens of countries around the world, countries worldwide that punish, imprison, and even execute individuals.
So that was Trump
Tweeting that out.
celebrating LGBT Pride Month.
And then he was in Britain, in UK,
Yeah.
right? UK, Britain.
It's all, yeah.
It's all the same.
Not Europe?
We're sorry.
Yeah.
It's not all the same.
And oh man, I forget his name. The liberal CNN guy was interviewing him. I forget his
Piers.
name. Yeah, Piers Morgan. Yep, was interviewing him about transgender in the military.
Okay.
I wanted to ask you about your military. Is this week you tweeted your support for the LGBT community around the world where they're being persecuted or excluded.
It's terrible.
Which does prompt the obvious question. If you feel that protective of the LGBT community, why did you feel the need to ban transgender people from serving in the US military?
Because they take massive amounts of drugs. They have to. And also, and you're not allowed to take drugs. You know, in the military, you're not allowed to take any drugs. You take an aspirin. And they have to. After the operation, they have to. They have no choice. They have to. And that you would actually have to break rules and regulations in order to have that.
But the cost of the medication is minuscule compared
Well,
to the
you
overall
also-
budget,
yeah,
right?
but
I
you
mean,
also-
accept that.
you also
I
had
mean,
the
the
cost
US
of that.
military spends a lot more money, for example, on giving Viagra to service men and women, or service men.
I didn't.
I didn't know that. He said, I didn't know that. Yeah, I didn't know that.
Wow.
We have the military apparently funding Viagra for a bunch of men in the military, as opposed to it. One of the things that kind of struck me about this was you have this. Trump's answer was actually he kind of went to medical. He kind of went to drugs. That was his answer, and that's not going to last.
It won't last until an actual war. One of the essential things here is military efficiency, and so Christians object to trannies in the military on moral grounds, and they object to us giving societal approval to that.
Right.
But there is a pragmatic argument
right.
Against women in the military in combat roles.
Right.
It disrupts military efficiency. The job of the military is to kill people and break things.
Right.
And you want to be efficient in doing that.
Right.
And so there is a moral argument. There's also a pragmatic argument. Trump can't make the moral argument because he doesn't have the resources, he doesn't have the framework or the worldview.
That's right.
There's a worldview. There's an argument to be made there, but the argument that he did make is not nonsensical.
Right. Well, and actually the argument that for women in the military being less effective, that's actually a biblical argument as well.
Yes.
The Bible itself says in several places in the Old Testament, the prophets say that armies of men that run away in cowardice and refuse to fight have become like women.
Right.
So the Bible itself says if a good way to lose a war is to have your military full of women.
Right.
So it's a biblical and a practical argument, and I think the same thing could be applied by analogy to the trannies, as you called them, I think a minute ago.
Right. So what? How do we also think about like Trump's tweet about LGBT contributions apparently that they've made to the U.S.?
That was appalling. So he's celebrating something that ought not to be celebrated, but the homosexual world is still beyond angry with him anyway because they don't believe him. They don't.
Do you?
To me, it's a
no,
win.
actually,
to me, it's a win-win.
Yeah.
No, I don't believe him.
I'm serious.
They don't believe him, and I think that he shouldn't have done that, but they don't believe him anyway, and I don't believe him because he's doing things like reversing the Obama policies on these issues. So they're calling him sort of a secular hypocrite. He's talking he's talking the secular talk.
Yeah.
Holding the flag, but he's not.
No,
he's not walking the walk.
What do you mean by win-win?
Well, it's a win because what Doug just said, no one believes him on that side. So he gains no fans. Right. And he's actually, just giving the bird to their God. He's burning fake incense, which to me is just hilarious because he doesn't gain anyone on that side. Everyone that loves Trump, it's purely pragmatic. We're getting stuff done. He gets to write that and say, what are you talking about?
And he gets to check that box.
Yeah, checks that box. Yeah. And behind the scenes, he's doing every single thing to unravel what Hillary would have had done in 1 month.
Right.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. So David's not here. We don't have the stinger to play it, but we got this great stinger. Hunger Games 2020 is kind of how we've been labeling the Democratic presidential race. It makes sense. Survival of the fittest, Hunger Games, whoever's going to win.
They're killing each other.
We got this great stinger. I can't play it, but
okay.
What I can play is
if you want to see Chocolate Knox, just send in money.
Exactly.
Once again,
join the show.
He's actually in the back room.
This is what you want for the rest of the year. Don't send any money in. But if you want to see changes, and if you want to see a pro-Trump guy on the show, this is what you're getting. Okay,
remember now.
That's great. That's great. So we got names for all the presidential candidates. We got Breadline Bernie, which is
people
one of my
were
favorites.
upset at you. By the way, can we just break for a moment? Like I saw people being very offended that you were getting to this level of name calling of the Democratic candidates.
I missed that.
Really?
Did you really?
I did.
I didn't know either.
Oh yeah,
I did.
No.
So I did.
Like brother, starting with brother. That's when you know you're in trouble, right? When someone says brother.
Dear brother.
Dear brother. I love you, brother.
It's
It grieves me to write this.
But all your friends become like they're in seminary. That first letter you get from your friend in seminary, brother, I pray for you daily. You're like, Steve?
And at lunch.
Right. Wow, okay, beseech comes out. But no, I saw people like really upset at you that you would get to this level of name calling. But I just wasn't sure if you were aware
What are
of
some
that.
of the other names? I want to repeat them now.
Breadline Bernie. We got Pinko Pete.
Pinko Pete.
We got Incompetent Inslee.
Which I think you could have a way better one for Pete, but it's still a family
Okay, keep
show.
going.
But go on.
Pride Month.
Look, now we have messages up on the back screen.
Oh. Do you want to take that down?
Darren Doane at gmail.com is right there.
Oh, that's what happens when Cock Knox is knocking.
Coop says keep rolling.
My,
People are like writing down
my
your
social
emails.
security is 563-816140.
911. All right, let me get to this. So we got John
Okay, sorry.
Hinklehooper. He's in.
I lost audio. See, I got headphones. I can't hear, but go on.
Oh, it's probably me now.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, there you go.
There you go.
You're on my line.
Okay. John Hinklehooper, he's running Hinklelooper.
What's his nickname?
Hinklelooper, whatever his last name is.
Hinklelooper?
Hinklehooper, I think is what it is. I don't know. Okay. And he was the former governor or current governor of Colorado, and he stepped into the race.
Okay.
And he's at this talk.
Democrat?
Yeah, he's Democrat.
Democrat.
Anyways, I'm going to roll the clip. This is just.
We know it is absolutely essential to beat Donald Trump, but it is not sufficient. We must address the divisions that are tearing us apart. We must tackle the kitchen table challenges facing Americans. But let me be clear. If we want to beat Donald Trump and achieve big progressive goals, socialism is not the answer. I was reelected in a purple state in 2014, one of the worst years for Democrats in a quarter century. If we're not careful, we're going to end up helping to reelect the worst president in American history.
So the thing that strikes me is the level of public discourse. If we want to achieve big progressive goals, socialism is not the answer.
Right.
What that is translation. If we want to achieve socialism, socialism is not the answer.
Right.
What does progressive mean?
Right. Or if we want to achieve socialism, we can't call it socialism.
Can't call it, right.
We have to keep saying it's not socialism.
But you can now. But you can.
But,
I mean,
that's what the booing.
You can in the Democratic primaries.
Right.
You must in the Democratic primaries. You must avow socialism, and that's the buzzsaw he ran into.
Yeah.
But everybody, left, right, and moderate in the Democratic Party is a socialist.
Yeah.
They're all socialists. They're just slow motion, high speed socialists.
They're fighting over whether it should be 65 miles an hour or 75 miles an hour.
Right.
Everybody's going to socialism.
And would you say that the Republican Party are just really, 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 really slower socialists?
I would say 2/3. 60% of the Republicans are just really slow motion socialists.
Got it.
Right.
And then the Freedom Caucus, or there's some.
There's still some legitimate conservatives.
There are true conservatives in the Republican Party, but they're also slow motion socialists in the Republican Party.
So how are you thinking about this whole Democratic? I remember back in the late '80s, early '90s. I remember saying, thinking that Democrats were socialists even at that time. And I'm in high school, and I'm like, that just is socialism. And the Democrats would get offended. No, we aren't socialists. And now, of course, Bernie's a Democratic socialist. And the adoption of the Democrats, they're adopting things at 90 miles an hour now.
Right.
Everything from the homosexuality of Obergefell, and then 2 months later after Obergefell fell, they are adopting the transgender movement.
And hardcore abortion.
Right.
So it used to be safe, legal, rare.
Yep.
We want abortion safe, legal, and rare back in Bill Clinton's day.
Right.
Yep. But now it's
Illinois pushed back the partial birth abortion ban.
Right.
In Illinois, they repealed it, or in the process of trying to repeal it. I mean, it was even that was an issue that Republicans and Democrats at least could say, like, at least let's not do that.
Right.
Let's not be that barbaric.
That's a little inhumane.
And now the
late term was always like no, nobody wants that.
Right.
Yeah.
But now it's like all the way through 9 months.
Baby out, let's kill it.
And you all saw Joe Biden just flipped on the Hyde Amendment thing. So
In 24, talk about adopting something
in less than 24 hours. I mean, the same thing, the boo machine that we just saw, that whole machinery, like was it like 40 years he was a supporter of the Hyde Amendment, which required no federal funding for abortions.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Right.
Yeah. And 24, in 24 hours previously, he's still affirming that, no, that's my stance. And then like 16 hours later, he comes out reversed.
And flips on the Hyde Amendment.
And that tells you that all of his poll numbers in the Democratic primary are helium filled. Right. That was not the move of a strong, secure candidate.
Yeah.
No.
That was the move of someone who knows that his mountain of support is made out of cotton candy.
Yeah. Right.
Wow.
So he's got to play to his base.
And
he must.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
And you wouldn't. No one should want to be elected or supported by that kind of support. Right. I mean, to be able to constantly have to be able to flip in 24 hours to make sure you keep your poll numbers up and your base up. No one wants that.
I think Democrats are smart enough to know that within the next couple of months, because they know right now that they can't beat Trump. It's impossible. And
You heard it here.
And they know that.
Yeah.
And so
barring nuclear war or
the
second Great Depression, or if there's a but if things stand the way they are now,
fair enough.
He doesn't have a chance.
Yeah.
So what they'll do if we think things are crazy right now, we don't know what's going to happen because they're going to flip this party so quickly to get ready. For 6 years from now, it's going to be crazy.
Yeah, and don't worry though, New York is about to become the first state to ban cat declawing.
Yeah,
right,
because of their compassion.
Yeah.
I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know
their
I'm closing
body.
out this segment.
It's not their body.
But we're going to come back with another great conversation.
David, come back.
Help.
David, come back.
Become a member now.
You don't understand.
For decades, the princes of information have ridden their high horses.
January 6th is a day that will forever live in infamy.
Looking down at the unwashed masses who didn't subscribe to their papers or bow at the altars of their ceremonial nightly broadcasts.
And the message said, end of message.
The total initiative relative to what we're going to do with more Border Patrol and more asylum officers.
This is the best Biden ever.
They spoke peace to their viewers while plotting lies and propaganda.
Ivermectin is a drug that is commonly used as a horse dewormer.
Misinformation. You are fake news.
We need to move on from January 6th. I say no. You don't move on because January 6th was an atrocity. It was one of the worst moments in American history.
These legacy media outlets are watching their empires crumble while independent journalists and content creators like us,
exclusive interview with the creator of meme veto power,
the ones they once mocked, are building armies of followers.
Legacy media is just not as important as it thinks it is. Joe Rogan's more important than any of us.
It is very simple. They're failing because they lied. And with every lie, they smiled and said,
but they're really criticizing science because I represent science.
When you build your empire on deception, don't be surprised when truth comes knocking at your door with an eviction notice.
When I grow up, I want to work for a woke company, like super woke.
When I grow up,
I want to be hired based on what I look like
rather than my skills.
I want to be judged
by my political beliefs. I want to get promoted
based on my chromosomes.
When I grow up, I want to be offended
by my coworkers
and walk around the office
on eggshells
and have my words policed
by HR. Words like
grandfather,
peanut gallery,
long time no see,
no can do.
When I grow up,
I want to be obsessed with emotional safety and do workplace sensitivity training all day long.
When I grow up, I want to climb the corporate ladder.
Just by following the crowd.
I want to be a conformist. I want to weaponize my pronouns. What are pronouns?
It's time to grow up and get back to work. Introducing the #1 woke-free job board in America, redballoon.work.
What you guys in the room.
Welcome back to Cross Politic. David, where are you? Help!
Marcus Pittman, please put something together to raise money for Chocolate Knox.
Join the club, obviously.
Right. With us on the line for this third segment, we are very thankful to have Michael Brendan Dougherty. I'm not going to try to say it all Gaelic-like.
Dougherty.
Okay, there you go. He's senior writer at National Review. He previously wrote for The Week, The American Conservative. His work has also appeared in the New York Times Magazine and ESPN Magazine. And he's the author of a brand new book, My Father Left Me Ireland, An American Son's Search for Home. There it is right there on the table. Michael, thanks for being on Cross Politic.
Oh, thank you so much. It's a pleasure.
So we want to talk to you a little bit about this recent intramural, in-house, conservative, I don't know what we want to call
Scuffle?
Scuffle?
Tiff? Pillow fight?
Fight? No, not a pillow fight.
Okay.
Pillow fighting pirates?
Yeah, right. That's what I was trying to tie in, but Doug didn't go for it. Yeah. So a couple weeks back, Sohrab Ahmari, he's a editor at New York Times. Is that right?
I'm going to say
no,
yes.
New York Post.
New York Post, okay. Tweeted, if you can't see why children belong nowhere near drag with its currents of transvestic fetishism, we have nothing to say to each other. We are irreconcilably opposed. There's no polite David Frenchian third way around the cultural civil war. Ooh. The only way is through. That was May 26th. And thus began this intramural discussion over the nature of what we're fighting for in the culture wars. Are we, and my take is, are we fighting for a distinctively Christian public square that makes room for freedom of conscience and the pursuit of happiness, a Christian public square that would make room for what we might call pluralism light, maybe? Or are we fighting for a purely secular, neutral public square, a pluralist public square that makes room at the table for Christianity as one perspective among many? So, Michael, is that how you see the debate, or do you see it differently?
I think the debate has spiraled out because Congress is doing nothing, Trump is traveling. The debate has spiraled out into everyone's hobby horses.
Right.
Beyond, I mean, I think this is like a full employment act for conservative writers now. But
job security.
But yeah, I mean, I think you've highlighted it well about what the ends are. But I think I think that's clarifying, because a lot of what the gas and smoke billowing out of this debate has been talking about the means rather than the ends. And maybe that's why it's not been as sharp or as clear as it should be. So essentially, Sohrab Ahmari said essentially that if by liberal principles you mean we have to consent to drag queens in the public library teaching our kids, then to hell with liberalism. And David French has replied manfully, well, these are laws that this is a framework that protects us. And if you give the state the power to crush, Sacramento's library against the will of Sacramento's citizens and people and the institutions that have authority there to have allowed this, then you are creating an environment where we're going to be crushed,
right?
Because essentially we're a minority. And I think it's also been clouded by the fact that, I mean, in my own personal assessment, I think David French has done a lot of good work in courtrooms, real work, fighting and making achievements
right
where possible. And I'm very grateful for that work. And if you're conservative, I think, one of the number one things you should have is gratitude for what is good. So I have been personally grieved by my two friends going at each other like this. But that's where it stands. I mean, Ahmari was making a more philosophical point that I think has to be discussed, which is, is what we mean by liberalism a form of autonomy and self-definition that necessarily excludes a Christian public square?
Yeah.
And that's right. So that is where I think it stands right now.
Could you flip it around and say that a harmonization or a peace offering would be to say that a distinctively Christian public square would be classical liberalism, the way it functioned prior to all this craziness that's descended upon us. So a response.
Yeah, I think.
Go ahead.
I think you're right. I mean, I had a discussion on National Review's The Editors podcast, and they were trying to narrow it down, and they were saying, their point to me was, you are the fear that's driving Amari and others like myself is partly that we feel we have lost what they call the cultural backstop.
Right.
That
right.
Okay,
Correct.
if the founders created this framework in which a Christian people could order the public square themselves, now that we are less of a Christian people, which if you look at the Barna survey head counts of how many people actually go to church, you can't argue that there is less practice of the faith in America now than there was previously. Then yeah, and that's been a point David has leaned on, which is that, okay, if we dispense with the normal rules of engagement that we've had, this liberal framework, we're going to be losers on the end of this.
But in order to fight for religious liberty, so what we're up against is this: religious liberty is itself a religious value, and it's not a religious value for all religions. Right. So,
Islam.
Saudi Arabia does not value religious liberty the way we do. So, if religious liberty is a religious value, and not all religions have that value, then that is a stumper for classical liberalism that wants to be secular.
Right.
So, if you want religious liberty long run, you've got to have Jesus.
Well, and not only that, but I mean, there's also just a social history and fact that not every religion conceivable could be practiced legally in America, right? I mean,
Yes.
you can conceive of all sorts of rights, RITES, that would violate what we take to be our RIGIHDS.
Yeah.
And even further, I mean, I'm telling tales out of school, but
go ahead.
At National Review, in our office a little bit, we ended up having a fight about the Glorious Revolution because, Amari and I, being Roman Catholics, our concern is maybe not religious liberty per se, but we would refer to as the liberty of the church, which is, a slightly different concept. Though I think America has proved a compatible republic for which Protestants and Catholics can share, not only with each other but with others beyond us.
I'm the least educated on this subject in the room, and so my sincere question would be, based on how this country was set up, we have the Constitution,
right?
You're
more educated than most, right there.
Okay.
Good start.
Does Islam compete or go against the Constitution? So can Islam be in America and still be under the Constitution, or does it rub against the Constitution? That's so my question is, as one that's not that educated in this area, we can talk about religious freedom. So I'm asking,
what about Islam?
What about Islam? Does it have to submit itself to the Constitution? And if it does it submit itself to the Constitution? Anybody?
I mean, I'm not an Islamic scholar or theologian. I mean, to me, a lot of this is judged by the proof in the pudding.
Right.
In a sense, I've been asked during these debates, essentially, what argument would I have other than the neutrality of the state for defending the existence of my church in this state? And I said my argument would be that if you point to, say, pornography and what it produces, which is, basically a form of human slavery for the participants that make it, and then for the onanists who view it. And then you point to my church, and when you see us practicing our faith, we produce hospitals, charities, religious services, and mercy being given out to sinners. One is good for this republic, and one is obviously bad. And to say that there's no way for the law to recognize or distinguish between them is a form of insanity. And it would be a form of insanity to the founders.
Yeah. And if I could tag on to that and give another example that I think everybody can see, is that Muslims could come to America. Let's say make America an ideal Christian republic. Muslim could come here to go to Disneyland, or to be a merchant or something, sell his goods. What he couldn't do if we were an ideal republic is come here and have his marriage to his 4 wives recognized.
But could he set up a mosque?
I would say not a minaret.
What do you mean? What's a minaret?
So Switzerland just banned minarets where the calls to prayer are issued.
Right.
That's church bells would be legal. Muslim calls to prayer would not be, because the public space is not neutral. Right. So as soon as you make the public space neutral, and the county courthouse neutral, you've got to be good with polygamy. You just have to be good with polygamy.
Or transvestitism or transfigurations or trans whatevers, all the trannies, and
old school.
And the LGBT everything. You have to be good with all of that.
Right, because basically I think we're living in God's reductio ad absurdum of secular classical liberalism. Huh. Look, you can't pretend that that one wife or 4 wives,
right.
He's got to break a certain way.
So you're saying that in a Christian republic, a Muslim could have his mosque, his church service, but couldn't have a public manifestation of that church service resonate in the square.
Yeah. Basically, we are a Christian country. We're not going to bind your conscience. You can continue to believe what you want to believe. You can pray as you want to pray. We're not going to bind anybody's conscience. But our laws and our public space are under the lordship of Christ.
Now, when I was listening to the National Review Editors podcast yesterday, Michael, it seemed like there's a couple places where Charles Cook, who I think is your boss, was raising the concern of, sort of like, so what are you going to do? And I think several of them said, so what are you going to do? And at one point, somebody raised some crazy website that apparently likened Amari's view to like ISIS or something like that. And Cook was clear and said, I don't think he's proposing anything close to that. But he did leave room to say, I think that maybe he left himself open to that slander, because if you're going to enforce your faith, then how are you not going to be coercive? Is the fear? The fear is, we're at least sliding down this coercive path. We're on a slippery slope to.
But has any culture anywhere on the face of the planet, anywhere throughout all of history of time, never enforced their faith?
Well, that's one question, right? Is the neutrality, supposed neutrality of the public square, real? Is it real? Is it possible? And if it is it also coercive as well?
Right.
And is there an example?
That's a great great way of articulating that question.
And coercion is inescapable. So a society is a coercive collective endeavor. So we coerce people who steal bicycles. We coerce people who rape and steal. Coercion is what a society does. So it's not whether we coerce; it's which people we coerce
and what's guiding
and what standard.
Yep.
By what standard do we?
Right.
How do we? What standard do we apply?
Really
how do we do it, and to whom do we do it?
Michael,
I want to add to the list there that Pastor Wilson made. It's also a prudential decision, right? I mean, there's also, a magistrate has to make a prudential decision about how extreme to go in enforcing this.
Sure.
Right. I mean, so we all here, to take the easiest example, we all believe that the public authority and the society have not only a right but a duty to enforce laws against murder.
Right.
Right.
But we make prudential decisions we do make prudential decisions about how to do that make enforcing the law harder for us. For instance, we have civil rights, we have attorney-client privilege. In California, at least for now, we have clergy privilege, where Catholic priests are not forced to break the seal of confession for. So we have these civil rights. There are limits. We don't install a surveillance society to algorithmically pick up murderers by using computer code to study security cameras that cover every corner of the United States, inside and outside. So there are also prudential things, and I think the fear among some is, I think the small L liberal mind, I think, does have a hard time, or has a tendency, when it's not elevated by other principles, whether religious or Republican or classical Republican, it has a tendency to see any question of where the state takes a side as permission for the state to go as far as possible and inflict any tyranny to achieve that end. So if we say we don't want smut merchants, we don't want pornography, they'll say, well, you're saying that the government can tell us where to point our cameras? Well, no, and not in every. In most circumstances, we don't say to laws against murder, "Oh, you're saying the government can tell me where to point my knife?" That is ridiculous.
Right.
Like,
I think it's a category error.
The law isn't coming in
categorical error.
Yeah. Now, Michael,
the law isn't coming into an effect when I run my knife through a slice of chicken breast.
Right.
It does when I run it through a human breast.
Right. Yeah. Now, Michael, where would you fall on this? I mean, would you advocate for a Christian society, a Christian, in name government and nation?
I mean, yes, but the question is the means to achieve that, and also your concern of what is the United States now.
Yeah. So, Michael, if I could go ahead.
So I would say I am aiming for this. Whether that results, I don't see any immediate prospect, however, of a confessional American state.
Yeah.
So I kind of don't even permit myself to think that far ahead.
Let me ask this. I've suggested.
However, just one last thought before I lose it. However, in a sense, the United States was not a confessional state in the way traditionally understood. Like, for a time, Ireland's constitution still has a preamble attributing all authority to the Most Holy Trinity.
Right.
The United States never had that as part of its
Constitution. Was ratified. It was ratified in the year of our Lord, 1789.
Right. I mean, it doesn't quite say who the Lord is, and we know that the writer of the Declaration, the Declaration was no aid to his orthodoxy.
Yeah, right.
Or his bloodlust against Catholics in France. But so you might say, though, I don't know if you would agree with this, or you might agree with this even more, that when people arrived in America in the 19th century or even well into the 20th century, that the public square itself, by its character, confessed to the lordship of Christ. Maybe you don't feel that way.
I think we did.
I think we did.
Yeah. Jefferson wasn't at the Constitutional Convention, and when they adopted the Constitution, 50 of the 55 men there were Trinitarian Christians.
Weren't they Presbyterians?
Well, a bunch were, but And when the Constitution was ratified, 9 of the 13 colonies had established state churches. So
yes.
9 of the 13. So we know that whatever the Constitution, and the last one went out in the 1830s. So that arrangement went on for decades after the Constitution was adopted, which means that what they were doing is they didn't want a church. The First Amendment didn't want a Church of the United States the way you have a Church of Denmark or a Church of England. They didn't want a federal church,
an established
federal church,
right,
that Congress could establish. But they did allow for state churches,
right.
So the Congregational Church was the Church of Connecticut. You had this all through the colonies, and so that was the atmosphere that everybody was breathing when the Constitution was adopted
and ratified,
and ratified,
right.
So whatever else it is, if we made the Presbyterian Church the Church of Idaho, whether that's a good idea or a bad idea, it wouldn't be an unconstitutional idea.
And it wouldn't conflict with, like, let's say, a national church of the United States.
Well, it would. So that's why they didn't want a national church. If you have a national bird, it doesn't really cause wars if the states have their state bird, or a national song and the state song, or the national flower and the state flower.
Right.
But if you have a national church and you have a state church that's a different one, you're just asking for
conflict.
You're just asking for conflict. So we were a federation of sovereign states. They wanted the established religion to be at the state level because we were a federation,
right?
We weren't a nation,
right?
Yeah,
Michael, how does that rub against kind of the Catholic view, that the Catholic view of the church, and what it means kind of for a national church and local state churches?
Well, listen, the Catholic Church's view, and articulated especially strongly in the 19th century, right, is that we champion the social kingship of Christ, and that corporate bodies, social subjects, also have a duty to confess the truth of where authority comes from in this universe.
Uh-huh.
So we do believe that. In the particular history of the founding, one of the complaints in the Declaration of Independence was the Quebec Act, which allowed free worship of Catholics in a neighboring territory in Quebec. So, there's a history, a little bit of a more complex history here.
Yes.
My own view is that what was previously called Christendom still exists, and still has what the French political writer Pierre Manette calls the Christian mark. And we may be less practicing, we may be backslidden, heretical, and fallen away.
Mm-hmm.
But if you look at where, say, Islam rubs up heavily against one of these nations with a Christian mark, you start to see the character come out. So, for instance, there was a telling incident in 2015 in Germany, I thought, where women who were out celebrating New Year's were attacked by kind of immigrant Muslim gangs.
Right.
And this was hushed up by the German media. But what was telling about the incident, I thought, was that the mayor of Cologne, the city where this happened, a good liberal, suggested, as a way of preventing this in the future, that women in Cologne don't go out unaccompanied, and that they don't go out wearing provocative or dress or anything like that. And that was interesting to me because it reflected conflicts that happened during the Crusades in the Crusader state, where Muslims were looking at Franks and saying, why do these men let their wives walk with their friends and other soldiers?
Right.
Why do women walk about freely in this way? And it reflects this Christian mark that Christian societies have women who can walk about freely and unaccompanied by their brother and father. And we have houses that are sociable and face the street and, in a sense, are sociable with each other.
Right.
Whereas in Islamic countries, you have veiled women and you have veiled houses. You have veiled gardens, usually. And the entrance to the house is veiled in a way. And so even Germany, which has abysmally low rates of church attendance and practice, it still bears a mark of its Christian of its Christian character. That's in my view.
And secular classical liberalism does not provide a tent that both those ways of living can fit under.
Right. Morality is inescapable, and there's no real such thing as neutrality or even secularism, so-called secularism, still has a morality.
Right.
All right. Well, this has been fun.
I'm going to do my best Knox close out here.
Wait, hold on.
All right. Okay.
Michael, thank you for joining us, and make sure you go out and get Michael's book, My Father Left Me Ireland, Amazon, wherever good books are sold.
All right. If you aren't baptized, get baptized. If you are baptized, get married. If you're married, have a baby. If you have a baby, baptize the baby.
Love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, and strength. Love your neighbor as yourself. Go fight,
laugh, and feast.
David, come home soon.